This is the price of a direct Cathay Pacific flight from Toronto to Hong Kong, and this is the price of a direct Cathay Pacific flight from Toronto to Hong Kong with a twist. As you can see, the first flight costs $1,470, while the second flight costs just $670 or $800 less. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I was able to save $800 on this flight, and I'll give you a spoiler now. It doesn't involve any credit card points, frequent flyer miles, discount codes, or any other sort of promotion. It's not a limited time offer, and it doesn't require you to jump through any hoops. And the best part is, it works anywhere in the world. I've actually been using this method for more than 10 years. And if you give me a couple of minutes here, I'll show you exactly how you can use it too. But first, let me take a second to set the stage here. I recently wanted to fly from Toronto to Hong Kong, and I wanted to get there as quickly and cheaply as possible. But I had a problem, because here's the list of the cheapest flights from Toronto to Hong Kong on every day in July. And as you can see, the cheapest price is 874 Canadian dollars, which is this flight right here. But the problem is that that flight takes over 39 hours to get there. And even if I choose this slightly more expensive flight, it still takes 28 hours. But a direct flight to Hong Kong only takes 15 hours. So I'm spending double or even triple the amount of time in transit in order to get a cheaper price. But I don't want to do that. Ideally, I want to fly direct, but still get a great price. So the question is it possible to fly direct and still save money? Well, actually it is, but you need to get a little creative, because direct flights are expensive everywhere in the world. For example, here's a calendar showing the cheapest direct flight from Toronto to Hong Kong for the entire month of July. As you can see, the cheapest is this Cathay Pacific flight, which costs $1,470. So how can I get on that direct flight at a better price? Well, let me show you how I did it. Instead of buying a ticket from Toronto to Hong Kong, I bought a ticket from Toronto to Kathmandu, Nepal. And I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would you fly to Kathmandu when you're trying to get to Hong Kong? Well, here's the thing. I didn't fly to Kathmandu. No, I booked a ticket with Cathay Pacific from Toronto to Kathmandu with a layover in Hong Kong. And when I landed in Hong Kong, I got off the plane, collected my luggage, and disappeared. And even though I only used half my ticket, as you saw at the beginning of the video, it only cost me a fraction of what I would have paid if I bought a ticket that ended in Hong Kong. And in this particular case, I saved $800 while still getting on the exact same flight. Now, I realize that you may be a little confused right now, but stick with me because I'm going to explain everything in detail, including how you can find crazy deals like this for yourself. But first, I want to show you a few more examples so you know this wasn't just an isolated case. Here's a direct flight from New York to Zurich on July 16th, which cost $413. And that's the cheapest direct flight of the entire month of July. But here's the exact same flight from New York to Zurich, continuing on to London Heathrow for just $318. And here's an even better flight continuing on to Edinburgh, Scotland for just $259. That's about 40% cheaper than buying the direct flight to Zurich. But the savings here are still relatively small, so let's look at a second example. Let's say you're flying from Los Angeles to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Here's a direct flight from LA to Jeddah with Saudia on July 17th, which costs $829. And that's also the cheapest direct flight of the month of July. But here's the exact same flight from LA to Jeddah, continuing on to Athens for just $447. And here's an even better flight continuing on to Dubai for just $366, which is less than half the original price. Guys, this is not hard to do. And I'm laughing as I say this because as I'm making this video, I found another example in real time. Check this out. As I was grabbing a screenshot of that flight from LA to Dubai through Jeddah, I noticed another flight from Los Angeles to Dubai through Shanghai. And it caught my eye because it seemed pretty cheap. And so I checked on direct flights to Shanghai, and unsurprisingly, they were significantly more expensive. Check this out. Here's the flight I randomly stumbled upon, which is LA to Dubai through Shanghai for $444. And I saw it because it was sitting directly below the Saudia flight with a stop in Jeddah in the search results. And if I look at direct flights from LA to Shanghai on the exact same day, there are two options and they both cost the same amount, about $740. So I just saved another $300 or 40% of the price completely by accident. And trust me, you'll be doing the exact same now that you're starting to understand this. So let me explain the logic behind how all this works so you can start doing it for yourself. All I'm doing is buying a cheaper ticket with a layover in my actual destination. That's it. And I know it's a little counterintuitive because you would think that flying from A to B would always be cheaper than flying from A to B to C. But in fact, it's often the opposite, and flying from A to B to C is often cheaper than flying from just A to B because the airlines know that passengers are willing to pay more for direct flights than they are for indirect flights. And that's what makes this strategy so powerful and so easy to use. So there's a super simple two-step process that I use to make this work. Step 1, lock in the right airline. You need to pick a carrier that meets two criteria. They need to have a hub in your destination city, and they need to fly to your departure city. For example, Swiss Airlines has a hub in Zurich, and they fly to New York, so that works. Saudia has a hub in Jeddah, and they fly to Los Angeles, so that works. And Cathay Pacific has a hub in Hong Kong and they fly to Toronto, so that works. And it's actually really easy to figure this out. You can just ask ChatGPT something like this: are there any airlines that have a hub in Hong Kong and also fly to Toronto? And then once you've found at least one airline, you can move on to step number 2, which is the search. And the search is actually really easy and pretty fun in my opinion. Here's how you do it. Go to Google Flights, choose a one-way flight, enter your departure and destination city, and the date you want to fly on. And now this is where things get interesting. First, I'm going to use the airlines filter to only select the airlines that ChatGPT gave me. This will often only be one airline, but occasionally you'll get more than one. Second, I'm going to change my destination to the continent where I'm flying. So I'll walk you through my Toronto to Hong Kong flight. So in this case, the continent is Asia. And once I do that, it'll bring me to the map here. Now, the Google Flights map is super powerful because you can look around and see all your different options at once. And because I selected Cathay Pacific under the airline filter, I'm only seeing Cathay Pacific flights, which means that every flight here is going to stop in Hong Kong. And this is so powerful because now I can use the price filter to find the cheapest Cathay Pacific flights from Toronto to Asia that stop in Hong Kong. And so when I put the price filter at $1,000 or less, you can see that there are a handful of different options, but specifically the ones that catch my eye are the ones over here in the $600 range. So I'm going to move the price filter down to $700 and below, and I've got a few options to choose from, all of which are basically the same price. And once you've found some options like these, you can open each of them up and take a look. Personally, I ended up going with this flight to Kathmandu because it had a 14-hour layover in Hong Kong, which was more than enough for me to collect my luggage and head out into the city. But I want you to notice something about this map that you saw a second ago. I could have chosen a flight just about anywhere in Asia and this would have worked because flights to almost anywhere except Hong Kong were cheaper than flights to Hong Kong. And again, I know this doesn't make logical sense, but this is the way flights are priced. Indirect flights are very often cheaper than direct flights, and so if you can find an indirect flight that has a layover in your destination city, then you've struck gold. And that's exactly what we just did together. Now, I'm going to share another money saving strategy with you in just a second here, and that one you can use on every single trip you take, guaranteed. But first, I need to clarify a few things about this strategy to make sure it works flawlessly for you. First, this really only works on one-way flights, and the reason is simple. Anytime you miss any flight in your itinerary, the rest of your itinerary will be canceled. So, for example, if I wanted to book a round trip from Toronto to Hong Kong, but instead I booked a round trip from Toronto to Kathmandu with a stop in Hong Kong in both directions, then as soon as I miss the outbound Hong Kong to Kathmandu leg, the rest of the trip, including the return leg from Hong Kong to Toronto, is going to be canceled. That's just the way airlines work all over the world. So don't get fancy with this, just keep it simple and use it for one-way flights. Second, we need to talk about baggage, because again, if you book that flight to Kathmandu, then the airline is going to send your baggage to Kathmandu. But obviously you don't want that, so there are two good solutions here. First, you can fly with just carry-on baggage and you'll be totally fine. That is the easiest solution. But if you have a lot of luggage that needs to be checked, then you need to talk to the check-in agent and make sure that you'll be able to collect your bags on your layover, not at the flight's ultimate destination. But having this conversation is pretty easy, especially if you've got a long layover. You can just say to the check-in agent, I've got a long layover in Hong Kong, so I'd like to collect my luggage there. They'll say no problem, they'll tag your luggage appropriately, and then you can get it when you land and just walk out of the airport. But the thing to be aware of here is if you don't have a long layover. For example, instead of my 14-hour layover, let's say I was only stopping in Hong Kong for 1 hour before my flight to Kathmandu. In that case, the airline's not going to want to give you your bag because it's too tight of a stop. But if you've got a layover of 6 or 8 hours or more, then it makes a lot more sense for you to want your stuff, and the airline will make it happen. So for me, I always try to get as long of a layover as possible because it means I'll always be able to get my bags, and I'd say 6 to 8 hours is usually around the minimum that I look for. And then a third question is, how do the airlines feel about you doing this? Well, to be honest, they don't like it. So you shouldn't mention it to them before, during, or after your flight. There's nothing illegal about skipping a flight like this, but it might be against the airline's policies, so it's not something you want to do with the same airline a bunch of times in a row. For example, if you fly the same route with the same airline every week or every month, then doing this every time may raise some suspicion. So instead, just do it sparingly or switch up the airlines you fly with, and you won't run into any issues. Now, I told you a minute ago I'd share another strategy with you, and I want to deliver on that now. Because once you've got a super cheap flight, you're also going to want a cheap hotel, right? Well, here's how to get a cheaper place to stay every time you travel. The strategy here is to use a cashback platform called Top Cashback, which will give you around 10% back on virtually any hotel anywhere in the world. And this isn't some fake discount like you get from some travel sites where they raise the price by 20% and then give you a 10% discount. No, this is real, and I've done it a bunch of times myself, so I can vouch for it personally. And I've broken the process down into 3 easy steps. I'm going to show you how it works here on desktop, but it works just as easily on mobile as well. First, open up an account with Top Cashback. I've left a referral link in the description, which gives you an extra $15 bonus, so I recommend using that. Second, go to categories, travel, hotels, and find any online travel agency that you want to book with. Personally, I like to use trip.com, and they generally offer 10% back on hotels, but you can use any other site you see here as well. And as a bonus, if you sort by a highest cashback percentage, you'll actually see some sites offering even more than 10% back. And then third, just click through to that website and book your hotel there like you normally would. You don't need any special discount codes or anything like that. As long as you start the transaction inside your Top Cashback account and click through to the booking site from there, then this will work. And so I've done this a bunch of times recently, and it always works flawlessly. For example, here's a hotel I recently booked for $330. And here's 10% of that amount, $33, coming back to me in the form of cashback, and another screenshot of when that $33 plus the $15 bonus landed in my account. So it really is as simple as that. Sign up with the $15 bonus, book any hotel in the world, and get a percentage of it back as cashback. But if you want to learn everything about how this works, as well as a few more things that will take this method to the next level, check out this video where I walk you through everything step by step. I'll see you there.